want to talk about Israel and Palestine today. It's August 14th, 2025. I guess I want to make a long story short, and then I want to go into details. And the amount of details I have rumbling around in my head is so much that I don't think I could ever express everything I'm really thinking, but I'll try. I support whatever Israel is doing. They have the Israeli government, Benjamin Netanyahu, whatever he's going to decide to do, and under the laws of Israel, what he's allowed to do, what he has to have permission from his legislator or judiciary to do. I support whatever they're going to do. And fundamentally, the reason why I support whatever they're going to do is because for the past 75 years, the United States Congress has supported, I think it's been 75 years, has supported the Israeli military above all the other militaries in that region, starting with, the British recognition of the nation of Israel, but then we kind of became the British Empire, I guess, after World War II. And so we were the big dog on the block, and what we decided through the United Nations is what comes to be. And so I think it was Harry Truman, made that fateful decision to recognize the legitimacy of the government of Israel from the American perspective in 1946, 1947. And that's it. That's all she wrote. And every year after year, for 70 some years, the government of Israel has been supported by the American government. Details, so many details. I mean, from an axiomatic foundation trying to build up my understanding of reality from its root. I know that I exist and that we exist, that there's 8 billion people on this planet. And then through my understanding of combination theory, there are so many different groups that we can form. And we form our groups based upon family membership, genetic heritage. We form our groups based upon the languages we speak or where we were born. We form our groups based upon the fact that we went through rituals, whether rituals to baptism and confirmation in the Catholic Church, or circumcision, and bar mitzvahs, or over in the Jewish religion, saying the Shahada if you're a Muslim, whether you convert or were born into it. I know the Buddhists have certain rites like that. And that's just from a religious perspective. People born in America, automatically American citizens, something that's subject to debate right now in the United States Supreme Court. If you're born in Canada, I guess you're a Canadian citizen, so forth and so on. You have memberships in so many different groups, and sometimes you're a member of two groups where one of the groups that you're a part of supports one thing, and another group that you're a part of supports something else. I felt that acutely in 2004 with America's decision to invade Iraq. I was against it at the time. I protested it, with signs and walk down the street kind of protests. And because one thing was, I was going to Mass, I was a full-blown Roman Catholic at the time. I was taking communion. And my Pope John Paul II, was very much against that war. And so my Pope was against the war. My president was for the war. What am I supposed to do, right? And so it is, in the current status with the what's happening in Israel is I have, a membership in other groups that make things difficult for me when I look at Israel and Palestine. And that other group is I'm a member of the Democratic Party of the United States. I support, left-wing politics, as it were, but I can absolutely be conservative and right-wing about some things, but that goes without saying. We all can be, I'm sure. And I listen to voices, that have other opinions about what should be happening there. And so you have like Bernie Sanders, who's Jewish. It helps, because it's when an aggrieved group, because Israel was certainly aggrieved on October 7th, 2023, to point that out and not point out the current suffering and, the label of genocide that's being placed on the Israeli military and the nation of Israel with relation to Gaza is not something I want to overlook. I can't mention one without now mentioning the other. It's like October 7th, yeah, but currently starvation, yeah. Bernie Sanders, it helps that he's Jewish, because he definitely doesn't seem to be supporting, and he's a United States Senator, he definitely doesn't seem to be supporting the current actions of the military in Israel. And so that does give me pause. In the end, again, it's not something that I'm able to really know. I'm not living there. I'm not a Palestinian. I'm not a Jew. I don't live in Israel. I just know that the current laws of the United States of America are constituted in such a way that if a majority of the people of the House of Representatives and the Senate vote for something and the president signs it, it becomes law. And how we spend our money, that's how it's done. And we have been continuing to support the government of Israel through this entire process. Go America. In the end, my membership in the Democratic Party, my membership, I certainly didn't vote for Trump. I never would. But the reality is, go America. And I ultimately, support. It's an interesting question. It's like, what is my identity? What's the highest level of my identity? Membership in my family, as a father to my two sons, might be my highest level of identity. Being a Roman Catholic, I once would have thought a follower of Jesus, I would have argued, was my pinnacle of my identity. And that it was such a pinnacle of my identity, I was even taught, brainwashed, I don't know, by certain understandings in the Bible, like Abraham willing to sacrifice his own son for the love of God, or to obey a God commandment, and that Jesus died on the cross for our sins. It's like a father sacrificing his sons. I have two beautiful sons. I don't think I would sacrifice them for anything. You know what I mean? But there was a time where my zealotry for my understanding of what Jesus was would have been, no, that is the most important thing in my identity. The most important thing to me is my relationship with God. What comes next is my relationship with my family. That certainly helped me when I had to deal with family members who were drug addicts, who were asking for money. I was able to say no, because, my relationship with God was more important than my relationship with a family member. So I'm definitely concerned about Israel. I remember talking to a Muslim, two different Muslim kids, one in his mid-20s, one of the smartest kids I have ever met, one of the smartest people I've ever met. He knows history better than, how many YouTube videos of history can you watch? I think he's watched them all. And he broke down the entire history of Israel in one night, and was able to, through historical analysis, definitively conclude that the modern state of Israel is thoroughly illegitimate. And I remember just listening to that when he was all said and done. I mean, I just have Harry Truman in my mind saying that we're going to, there's this old video I once watched of Harry Truman declaring America's support for Israel, which has been confirmed year after year after year for 75 years in the American budget. So say he's telling me, he's looking me in my face and saying, "You America, he's telling me America's illegitimate by saying Israel's illegitimate." He doesn't realize that. That's what he's saying to me. And, it's like, go America. So somewhere at the very top of what I am is that I'm an American, right? Somewhere at the very top. I knew another Muslim girl, wonderful kid. And she, knew without question that Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad agent who was corrupting American officials on behalf of the Jewish lobby in order to corrupt America and force America to the whims of Israel. I was like, lobbying is a necessary part of the American system because people need to be able to communicate. Talking to a congressperson is called lobbying. You need to be able to talk to senators. And, it's a free country. Senator and a congressperson is allowed to talk to whoever they want to. And they can take whatever amount of campaign money they want at the same time. And it's just the way it works. Do I like it? Yeah, but not really. But can you figure out a better system? And there's always the rub, right? And there's always the rub there. And so the fact remains is that I like what I saw on that podcast by the ABC News reporter, who basically pointed out that a lot of people who were just basically made ashamed by Jeffrey Epstein because they had pictures and videos of sexual predilections and things of that sort going on. That he pointed out that Hugh Hefner used to do it at the Playboy Mansion. You know what I mean? So a lot of people were just ashamed and embarrassed and Jeffrey Epstein had this hold over them because he had all that stuff. Was really all it was. And in the end, those people, like Bill Gates, and he was in that, they talked about him very specifically in that podcast. You should watch it. It's called ABC News If You're Listening by Bevan. And the one about Jeffrey Epstein's not long ago. That a lot of people benefit from making you think there's conspiracies going on. Like he was murdered in his jail cell and all that kind of stuff. I mean, maybe he was, but I don't think it's likely. And I think he probably just committed suicide. And I think that, until I get better evidence to suggest otherwise. The idea that he was Mossadish and corrupting Americans on behalf of the Israeli lobby, it's just, nah. I'm not buying that. We need a lot more evidence. It's certainly convenient for a group that is opposed, a group that is different than the Jewish group. So many different groups here. Groups within groups. You have Jewish groups and then types of Jews. You have Catholics and types of Catholics. And you have right-wing Catholics, left-wing Catholics, more broadly speaking. Lapsed Catholics. I mean, it was so many different versions here. And so, in Islam, a lot of people, particularly younger Muslims, I think are going to be confounded by their, desire to demonstrate their loyalty to their group. And loyalty to their group would definitely mean that you're going to support Palestine over, the Palestinians over the Israelis. You know what I mean? And so that's loyalty to your group is going to call you to do that. And, but truth is truth. And truth is truth. It is, everything has an initial seed. And I remember when that United States Air Force guy lit himself on fire. I actually watched the raw video of him lighting himself on fire, I think in Washington, D.C., I think by the Israeli embassy, and say, I will be not complete complicit in genocide. He did this a year ago. He was talking like that, even more. I actually wrote a video about it, but I never posted it. I didn't make a video. I made a voice note about it. I do that sometimes, and then I'll listen to what I was saying to help me try to rethink about how to say something for one of these videos. And I remember taking this to a friend of mine, and telling him, he said he's not complicit in genocide. And my friend, if he ever watches this video, will laugh because he'll know who he was. Because he said, and he's not. I was like, he isn't, is he? Because as an American tax-paying citizen, I am complicit at some amount for what's happening to the suffering of the Palestinians there. But, then this goes right to the heart of life itself. I mean, are there Palestinian children and Palestinian people that are completely innocent and completely blameless and yet are suffering tremendously or have already been killed? And the answer is yes. And so who did the killing? Well, it could have been an Israeli soldier pointing a gun with the intent that they had, shot and killed that completely innocent kid. And yet it's not the Israeli soldier who's to blame. It's the people who decided to do what they did on October 7th that caused it. I mean, when we dropped all those bombs that we dropped on Germany during World War II, we wiped out, what was that one city that we wiped out again? I'm trying to think of the name of the city. The bomb, the fire bombing is for that one city in Germany. Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut talks about it. And, were there innocent Germans that died? Were there people who died in that fire who were completely anti-Nazi and been anti-Nazi since Hitler was elected, never voted for him, worked against them as much as they possibly could? Absolutely. Did we drop bombs on them and kill them? Yeah. Would I have, as a major in the United States Army Air Corps, being ordered by my superior officer to do this raid and drop these bombs on that city, would I have done it? Yeah. Yes, I would. I'm German, too. I have that ethnic group as my background, but my citizenship in America is a higher and more important thing to me. That's the analysis that I make on that, and I think it should be to any American citizen. And so I would have dropped those bombs, because the more brutal you are in war, the harder you are in war, the faster you bring it to an end. And then that's just what you have to do. And, you can look at this Israeli situation and you can say, well, they don't want the war to end until all the Palestinians are moved off that land or killed. And that would, absolutely be genocide. But they're saying, and I have no reason to doubt this, that they didn't get their hostages back. And they're going to keep fighting until they have completely degraded Hamas's ability to ever fight again. Unconditional surrender. Isn't that what Ulysses Simpson Grant demanded? Isn't that what we demanded of the Germans? Isn't that what we demanded of the Japanese? With the proviso that we let the emperor remain emperor. I know there was a little condition to their unconditional surrender, but that's neither here nor there. Isn't that what we demanded? How's it any different? I don't see it. So in the end, God looking down upon us. I think God's there. I don't think he ever communicates with us. I don't think he ever talks to us. Everyone knows that's what I think about God. I have another video to come where I'm going to talk about the maximal God versus the minimal God, and which of the two gods or some variant in between that I believe in. And it's a variant in between, but, in the end, I just, so long as, in my heart, I'm being truly objective about my analysis, I don't think I'm going to be impacted in what happens to me in the afterlife. You know what I mean? So long as I'm objective in my analysis. But if I decide God has a certain trait so that I can continue to do something that's evil, I pay a price, I have to. That's just the logic of it. What was I talking about? God, right? So God's looking down upon us. And I think God is all loving. I don't think he communicates to us. I think you can, if you really put your mind to it, understand what he wants. But you got to understand what he wants through the operation of logic, using mathematics on your budget and your money, the best of your understanding of reality, and how you affect the most good that you can in reality with your best understanding of reality. And you do that as best you can. Then I'm sure, even if there was a better thing for you to do, but you did the best you can with what you knew at that time, and I think that you're going to be okay. God looking down at the world wishes all of humanity would be united. That's obvious. That we would all see ourselves as 8 billion people that evolved out of this planet from an original ancestor 4.3 billion years ago in a system that came from the Big Bang. And that here we are. And that we're all, unfortunately, we came through an evolutionary process where we need to kill to live. Predator prey, and that we're always stronger when we're in groups, but when you join a group, it's easy to be taken advantage of. So you're always struggling between trying to be an individual versus being part of a group, and it's hard. And then step to step, you always have to make the analysis. If America declared war on another country and told me that I had to pick up a gun and go fight, would I do it? The answer is not always. There are definitely stories in my imagination I can create where I would refuse. Absolutely. Can't think of that many. My imagination's filled with all kinds of choices where I would absolutely pick up that weapon and fight for America. But I can think of somewhere I wouldn't. I would refuse to do it. Because my membership in the group that is the human race is more important. It is, in a way, the most important thing. In a way, is the most important thing. That doesn't mean that sometimes I don't have to, because when other groups are not loving my group back, and everything is difficult and confounded and hard to deal with, everything gets difficult because the reason why that group might not be loving my group back is because we did something to trigger that lack of love, and then everything gets really complicated. Everything gets really difficult. But I mean, we all have that problem. We all have to recognize that in the moment. It's like, I think of the people I don't get along with anymore. Family members, close relatives, friends that I don't talk to anymore for various reasons. You know, how much better it would be if we forgave one another and we got along with one another, and you recognized my point of view and said you were sorry, and I recognized your point of view and said I was sorry, and then we became friends again, united, and maybe that the bond would come to us because of our joint forgiveness. I mean, wow. I mean, God looking down upon this world, think of the wonderful things that could happen. There would be a flowering of love, and there would be more happiness. There would be just so many things would be so much better. But that's not what typically happens. There isn't that level of forgiveness. There's because forgiveness seems stupid. You forgive and then you get punished some more. And somebody does you wrong and you're like, I'll forgive you. And then they do you wrong again. It's like, you got to be fucking kidding me. I'm not going to keep doing this. And it's just, it's the dilemma of what we are. Small wonder this world continues. It is what a challenge it is to be human. How difficult it is to figure out what's right sometimes. Small wonder a lot of people give up and just do what's wrong. And I think that I call upon myself, I call upon everyone to try to do what's right, always. And you can't figure it out, then you try to figure it out. Then you have to act with incomplete information. That's just fundamental, without being sure. And then you act, and that's what you have to do. And then you reflect and look back. But the more you reflect and look back, the more it makes it difficult for you to move forward and do something, to create something new. So you have the balance. Nothing's easy about this. Nothing's easy about this. So, my heart grieves. But I'm not lighting myself on fire in front of the Israeli embassy. Am I complicit? I don't know what your meaning of your word complicit would be in this case. I'm an American. My legislators authorized year after year after year to make big decisions on my behalf so I can focus on the decisions I need to make in my personal life and my personal profession. So the things I'm responsible for, I can take care of because they're going to be responsible for these other things. You can call them bigger things, but other things. Because, it could be you being responsible for what you're responsible for and paying careful and detailed attention to those things can be maybe the smartest thing you can do with your life. Yeah, it hurts, man. I really wish there was something else I could say here. But I'm really, running out of things to say. I do want to point out that, I do think, Judaism is an utterly false religion. I think the Roman Catholic Church is a false religion. I think all of Christianity is false. I think all of Islam is false. Don't get me wrong. These are all these religions are highly credible and beautiful, and they form a basis for groups that we owe large measures of loyalty to. You need to recognize that about a Jewish person. You need to recognize that about a Muslim person. You need to recognize it about me, a Catholic person. But don't let your search for what is true be confounded by your loyalties. I love you all. Peace.